Hey guys, in today's Retro News, we're going to talk about the new Ghostbusters movie. We're going to talk about cassette tapes and vinyl records and how they've been blowing up. Also, we're going to give you a little bit of info about the new Unsolved Mysteries that Netflix is making. So don't turn that dial. What up to my peoples, and welcome to Retro Crunch, your nostalgia channel where we talk about current news that relates to all things retro. And the first thing that we're going to talk about right now is Ghostbusters 3, or at least that's what they seem to be calling it, even though it doesn't have an actual title yet. We've been hearing on the news and on Twitter and everywhere else that there's a new Ghostbusters movie coming out. And it's definitely happening. And y'all might remember a couple months ago I was actually talking about the Ghostbusters reboot because Dan Aykroyd, he actually did an interview where he had talked about this, but he would not say who was going to be writing it or who the director was going to be. And now we know that it's going to be Jason Reitman. He's going to be directing the movie, and his dad, Ivan Reitman, is actually going to be the one who's going to be producing the movie. So that information is good to know. And then in an interview right after releasing the information on Ghostbusters 3 that's coming out, he said, "I've always thought of myself as the first Ghostbusters fan when I was 6 years old visiting the set." He also said, "I wanted to make a movie for all the other fans. This is the next chapter in the original franchise. It is not a reboot. What happened in the 80s happened in the 80s, and this is set in the present day." So with that information right there, we now know that it is not going to be a reboot, and we know that it's going to be taking place after the first and second movies, which actually happened in the 80s. But this one's going to be set in present day, so we can only assume that it's going to have the main actors from the 80s, but they might be including some other actors as well to kind of try to keep that relevance so it can bridge the gap between the younger audience and then the fans. Jason Reitman also said that the cast from the 2016 Ghostbusters are not going to be in this movie. So we know that that movie was not part of the canon from the 80s movies. And rightly so, they shouldn't be in this movie. And they haven't started filming yet, but once they actually do start filming, we should get a better gauge of when this movie's actually going to be coming out. So we know that the last two Ghostbusters movies, I'm talking about the original ones, they came out in June. So it's possible that this one could be coming out in June of 2020. But until they actually announce it, we won't know for sure. One of the biggest questions on everybody's mind is who is going to be in this movie. Are we going to see Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd? Which it does seem like that they would probably be the obvious choices since they seem to be more in the know on what's going on. Also, they've both been going to Twitter recently and posting some information that kind of bolsters that evidence. But I would also like to see Bill Murray get in the mix. We haven't heard a peep from him about it. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. And right about the time that they released the news about the new Ghostbusters movie, there was also a little teaser trailer that was released for it. It doesn't really show too much, except for it kind of pans out to a barn. And then you can hear someone in there kind of working on a proton pack. But when they finally pan in and then they go into the barn, you see them, or you see a cover get lifted on the vehicle, the Ecto-1. So we'll see what happens with that, but the trailer's kind of short, but I'll link to that down below as well. Aside from who's going to be in the movie and also getting to see this trailer, the third thing that most people will really want to know is what is the plot going to be about? And I was able to find 3 corroborating websites that stated that there was going to be, at a minimum, one boy who's going to be between 12 and 13 and a girl who's also going to be between 12 and 13 years of age that are going to be the main characters in this new movie. Now, when and if they're going to be meeting up with the original cast, I don't know, because Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd didn't necessarily state that they were going to be in the movie. They're just kind of pushing for it and seem to be the champions for getting this movie made. So we don't know for sure. And these 3 websites, I'm not real positive if they have good evidence that this is what's going to happen, but it's the best we have to go on right now. And then next up, Netflix just announced that they are going to be bringing back or reviving Unsolved Mysteries, which is basically a show that is about cold cases that have never been solved. They kind of go, they explain a little bit in detail about what the case is about, and they actually asked the audience to help them solve the cases. And the original show actually came out in 1987 and ran to 1997, and I believe there was like over 500 episodes. And they did revive it in 2001, but it didn't last too long. But this new revival or remake, it's actually going to be coming on Netflix. They have not announced yet when it's going to be coming back, but Netflix did put it on their docket for one of the shows they're going to be making. And then moving on to some retro gaming news. I remember as a kid, and I love this about the NES, I loved playing with the NES Zapper. You remember playing like Duck Hunt and Hogan's Alley, and there were some other games that you could play, but I used to love shooting the screen and killing those ducks, which I did not realize that with the controller you can actually control the ducks themselves. That was something I just learned recently. But it was really fun growing up. And the thing that I hate nowadays is if you do have that Zapper controller, it's really hard to find a console that you can actually use it with, and getting an older TV that it'll actually work with. That seems to be the main problem with this with the Zapper, is it does not really work with the LEDs or the LCDs or any of the newer TVs that are out. But if you like retro gaming consoles, you might like to hear about the fact that there's a game company called Hyperkin that they make a lot of retro consoles and retro peripherals. Well, they are working on a Zapper that will actually work with an original NES console. So if you have the NES Classic or a retro console that plays NES games, or a emulator or an actual arcade, you're not really going to be able to use this new Zapper. But if you do have an NES, original NES, you will be able to use it. It only works with that. There's no word yet on the actual price for it or when it's going to be released, but I will let you guys know when I find out more, and I'll link to the article down below. And then a few more cool stories that I'll actually link to in the description down below as well. The first one is Motorola is actually working on a new Moto Razr phone. And also, a report just came out that shows vinyl records and cassette tape sales are up more than 12% from this time last year, while CD sales are actually down 18%. So it looks like the trend of people collecting tapes and records isn't going away anytime soon. But even though people are buying a lot more records and cassette tapes, the biggest jump is still going to be in streaming, which is up 41%. And then last up, we lost a great. Carol Channing, who was an actress and a singer, she just died this week at the age of 97. I mostly remember her from being on the Bob Hope specials and a couple of the TV show, game shows back in pretty much in the 70s and 80s. I at least saw them in reruns. And then she was in a cartoon called Shinbone Alley, which I think it came out in the 70s, which it's one of those cartoons that I remembered her voice in. She was a good voice actress for that cartoon. But you guys got to check this out. So I'm going to tell y'all that she might have been the original OG when it comes to wearing gold necklaces and a big clock on her neck. So if y'all don't believe me, you got to check this out. Alright, well, most of us know who Flavor Flav is, right? The guy from the rap group Public Enemy. Well, Carol was sporting the gold dookie chain with a clock on it and a beanie and glasses long before the 80s rappers ever thought it was cool. And if you don't believe me, here's proof from an old 1966 Cornflakes commercial that she was in with Gomer Pyle. See, told you guys, that girl is gangster. Anyway, so be sure to check out our next video right over there, and I will catch y'all on the flip side. And remember, if it ain't retro, it ain't worth watching.